We've all been told don't try anything new race day, and that still holds true, but there are a few exceptions to the rule. So today I want to talk about my experiences with what I've tried new on race day, what's worked, and what hasn't. The major thing I think when it comes to not trying anything new race day is nutrition. So in 1997, my very first Ironman, I didn't have a nutrition plan. I really didn't train with much nutrition, and I tended to bonk a lot, but I really didn't know what that meant. I just knew after long rides, I'd come home so hungry that I would eat anything and everything in sight. And when I got down to Kona, I arrived, about 10 days early, ran into an old friend of mine from Michigan, because at this time I had lived in Colorado, and I just asked her, I go, what do you eat? What do you do on the bike? What do you do with a special needs bag? And then what do you eat and drink on the run? And I followed her advice. I put some Fig Newtons and pretzels in my special needs bag, and I got that at mile 60, loved it. And then I had my first GOO vanilla bean at mile 2 of my first marathon, first Ironman, and it worked. So I continued to do that for a few years with consecutive Ironmans. And then I kind of got bored with that type of nutrition, and I accidentally one race had a chocolate GOO, and it made me sick to my stomach. So I really started to understand the importance of nutrition. Don't try anything new race day, because you could have a negative effect. So let's talk about the time when trying something new race day nutrition also worked to my benefit. In 2001, I was training for the 5430 Sports Ironman in Boulder, and I had trained with jelly beans most of my longer rides and runs, and I had a little fanny pack full of jelly beans that I grabbed as I started the marathon. And as soon as I started my run, I put one jelly bean on my mouth, and I said, there's absolutely no way, this is not what I'm going to do race day. Tossed the bag of jelly beans to my friend, and then I was forced to rely on what was offered on course, because I'm not going to run an Ironman marathon, let alone a marathon, without any nutrition. So I don't remember what the product was at that time, but I tried new bars, I tried new gels, I tried new hydration, and again, I got lucky, it worked for me. So the time when you should try new nutrition is when yours isn't working, or you're like me, you trained with it for too many times and you just didn't want it on race day. So I have enough experience to share with my athletes that I coach. If you know something works for you already, there's no need to overdo it in training, just save it for race day. For example, Gatorade. Gatorade Endurance, regular Gatorade works for me race day. I never train with it. I like to train with Tailwind. It's delicious if it was offered on the course like it is during ultra runs. This is great product, but I don't want to carry it with me on an Ironman course. So I train with Tailwind, I race with Gatorade. One thing I don't do is I don't necessarily like the caffeinated nutrition products. I like my caffeine and coffee, and that's about it. So if you are going to use caffeine in a race, make sure you practice with it to see how your gut handles it and if it's going to have any GI distress with you. And another story I wanted to tell is I tried Coke for the first time in 2011, 70.3 World Championships when it was in Henderson, Nevada. I read Chris McCormick's book while I was on the flight to the race, and he talked about how Coke saved him and overcame some issues he had with energy, and during that race it was super hot, and I tried Coke for the first time. I got lucky, it worked for me. So in the end, the point of my story is I have a strong gut, and I know that with experience. Not everyone does, so it's best not to try any nutrition race day unless that is your absolute only option. Coke, pretzels, chicken broth, those are stuff that I do not do on race or do in training, but it works for me race day. Not the chicken broth anymore. So that's it. So let's move on to the swim. When it comes to the swimming, I think the biggest thing is not trying a wetsuit race day because it might not fit, it might feel tight in your chest, it may create some breathlessness if you're not used to the restriction that a wetsuit provides you. And if you try that on race day and it's too tight and you can't breathe, you're going to be panicked and in trouble. So I have a wetsuit that is tried and true. It's like from 2008 that I still wear. It's big, it comes off my body. I know how easily it gets off. I know how easily it puts on. So it's always best to try your wetsuit out before the race. Another thing about trying a wetsuit race day is you want to know what the water temperature is, so you want to make sure you're prepared to have a sleeveless wetsuit, a full sleeve wetsuit, or maybe you're just going to wear the course short. I actually did a whole video on choosing the right wetsuit based on water temperature that you should check out. The only time to try a wetsuit out race day is, again, if you show up to the race and you're new and you have no idea what the water temperature is and it's dangerously cold, which I would say is, maybe under 63. Ironman and USA Triathlon events cancel the swim if it's below 54 degrees. Then wear whatever you got. So in 2004, I went to a race in Colorado called Spring Chill. It was the first weekend of May, and I didn't have a wetsuit, or I couldn't find my wetsuit. No, this is it. I wanted a long sleeve wetsuit, and I didn't own a long sleeve wetsuit at the time, so I borrowed my friend's. It was an extra small, and it was so tight. I struggled getting it on, and I struggled big time taking it off. In the end, I'm so happy I wore it because it kept me warm, because the water temperature was definitely under 55. It was really cold. And it's not something I would recommend because it was just very uncomfortable, very tight around the neck, very tight around the chest. I've worn wetsuits. I was okay with that, and I was very happy to be warm. But in hindsight, I would recommend that you always try the wetsuit out and don't rely on race day to do it. Also, when it comes to clothing on the bike, I used, the first time I used a one-piece tri-suit was, I bought it in an Ironman in Kona, and I bought it I bought it at the expo the day before my race, and I wore it race day. And that was the one and only race I actually had GI distress, and I had to stop at the Porta-John every mile on the run. So unzipping the thing, taking it off, going to the Porta-John was a hassle. I would never recommend doing that. It was a little bit small too. The tri-suit was a little bit small on me too, and that's not something I would recommend doing race days. I'd recommend making sure you wear the clothing in training that you plan to use on race day. So let's talk a little bit about the bike. So a few things that I've done for the first time is racing wheels. Now, I think racing wheels are great. I don't own a pair. I usually rent a pair or borrow a pair of racing wheels. They usually come with a deeper dish rim. So the first time I used a racing wheel was my friend's. It was in the 2001 5430 Sports Boulder Ironman. The rim was very deep, and I got a flat tire. And I never changed this type of wheel with a deeper dish rim before. Got a flat tire around mile 70 of the Ironman bike course, and it took me about 20-ish minutes to change because I only had one tire lever, and I just didn't practice, and it was just something I'm just like, whatever. It was an experience, and I lived to tell the tale. But make sure, if you're going to use new equipment, try to use it beforehand. Make sure you practice changing a flat tire before race day. I don't recommend changing your first flat tire race day, so you can prevent that from happening by changing the flat tire in the privacy of your own home. Another thing about the bike is, back in 1992, when I first did my first race, about 11 p.m. the night before the race, I decided I was going to use my friend's road bike because I had started on a mountain bike, and I had to get shoes and pedals the night before a race. I knew the owners of the bike shop. They got me in, they got me shoes, they got me cleats. I had never clipped in and out of a pedal before, let alone I didn't know how to change gears on a road bike. So my first triathlon experience on a road bike, I wasn't clipped in because I didn't know how, and I didn't know how to change gears. So I rode the whole bike kind of spinning in the small chain ring. So I recommend you try to train a few times in the bike you plan to race on with the proper shoes, pedals, cleats, and aero bars. I used to, for years, because I rode a road bike after my mountain biking, you should check out my video on triathlon then and now. But for years I rode a road bike, not a tri bike, so I would slap on some clip-on aero bars. Again, the night before the race, I didn't train on them, and they were always not properly fitted to me on the road bike. Some of them were 2 pieces, and sometimes they'd fall because I didn't put them on tight enough. And other times they were just too wide or too narrow, and it just kind of could have been a disaster. But with my personality and my experience, I just brushed it off as a learning experience, and now I get to share that with people when I create these videos, and I get to share my experience with beginners as well as advanced athletes on what to do and not to do. So make sure you know exactly what you're going to ride on. Don't wait till race day. Also, if you're going to use metrics, heart rate, power, pace, during the race, make sure you understand how to use it in training. You don't just want to slap on a heart rate monitor race day and be focused on it. Again, if you slap a heart rate monitor on race day, or if you use a power meter race day, use it as data feedback, but don't use it and expect to know what kind of heart rate zone you should be on or what kind of power you should be on unless you've done the proper analysis and testing and gotten the feedback through training. Make sure you don't wait till race day to know how to use your metrics. Another thing I wanted to mention, because I'm holding the laces, is let's move on to the run. Something I've done is gotten a new pair of running shoes the day before the race. They've worked out well for me, but I tend to get a hot spot on the bottom of my foot if I don't break in the running shoes. The hot spot is during like an Ironman marathon will come at the middle of my foot. And during a sprint triathlon, due to just the higher intensity, I could get the same hot spot if I don't break in the shoes before the race. Other than that, I've been okay using shoes, usually the same brand that I've been training in, but they're just not broken into. Something I don't recommend is putting on elastic laces the day before the race or race day. And these are just laces that you put on your shoe and you can just slip your foot easily in and out of the shoe for faster transitions. Now, the reason I don't recommend waiting till the day before the race to do this is because I've done it, and I've had runs where my foot goes numb because the laces are too tight. It took me a few times before I realized the reason my feet were numb is because the shoelaces were too tight. So I have a race coming up. I bought the laces a few weeks ago, put them on my shoes, I trained in them, everything's great, they're all dialed in. So let's a little bit of review. Things that you want to plan ahead for are nutrition, what you're going to wear in the swim, what you're going to wear on the bike, what you're going to wear on the run. Try to plan that ahead of time. Things that you need to do race day if you're in a panic is if your nutrition, if you drop your nutrition on the bike, if the nutrition isn't settling right, even though you've trained with it and everything was good, maybe it's not settling on race day. There's times and places that you're going to need to try stuff new on race day. I'd love to hear anything you want to share with other athletes. Comment below, join the chatter in the T2 Endurance group. It's nice to share feedback from other athletes and their experiences, and I hope you make it a great day.